Thank you. Eleanor, vocalize for me. Okay, so here we go. And by the way, the link is only viewable to the people I give it to, so I'll only share the link with your class, FYI.
How do I make more of the, so like I have the 1 point in the center and like the horizontal line going across the screen, but I don't have any of the other lines. I just have the one.
Are you on the desktop or on that Apple? I'm sorry,
I'm on desktop.
Okay, we're gonna do it right now because yes, it looks different. You ready? So when I click on this little thing, boop, I get just the vanishing point. Now, I don't know why they chose to do that, but they did. So what you have instead is, and even that you can turn off. What you have instead, y'all, is this cursor. And do you see as I move the cursor that the lines on the cursor change? And so y'all don't have the lines that are on the app. You just have this cursor, and then the cursor, oh, let me pick a different color. The cursor, when the lines line up, do you see the diagonal line? Basically, it's kind of like the thing on the app where you can turn off the grid. Wow, it shouldn't let me make that line. Okay? Does that make sense? Makes sense? Oh, neat, Victoria. Okay, well, I didn't hear a no, that doesn't make sense. So then what's nice about this though is it will show you when you have like a perfect vertical line. And in some ways I do find it actually to be a little less obstructing. So play around for a minute in all of your different apps and programs that you have and see what happens when you do different types of lines, okay? And hopefully it all works out okay. That's the end of my lecture, and I will see you all next week. Just joking. Okay. Questions? Okay. So key components, y'all. You ready? Key components to your perspective. Like I said, your standing point. Now, your standing point is literally like where you were standing. If you move, then that may or may not change the vanishing point, okay, dramatically. But if I move to the left here and my standing point is here, then the chances are that my vanishing point will move more over here. So if I place my vanishing point right in the center, then that means that my standing point is right in the center. Okay. My vanishing point is where all of my vanishing lines are going to go. And as things get further away, they disappear. On the horizon line, that is basically my eye level. And we will talk further about how to find your eye level without a horizon. But for now, let's just make some shapes. So here are some principles that you need to remember. In a 1 point perspective, horizontal lines are always horizontal. Vertical lines are always vertical. And orthogonals are always orthogonals. The orthogonals are the lines that are receding back in space. Okay. In a 2-point perspective, vertical is always vertical. What was a horizontal becomes an orthogonal. And then, of course, orthogonals are orthogonals. So in a 2-point perspective, there are no horizontal lines unless the line matches exactly to the horizon line. Excuse me. In a 3-point perspective, vertical lines are orthogonal, horizontal lines are orthogonal, and orthogonal lines are orthogonal. There are no more horizontal lines, no more vertical lines, no more, everything's orthogonal. Unless, again, you have a vertical line that's lining up to something, or your horizontal line that lines up with your horizon line. Okay. So we're going to start with 1-point perspective because it's the easiest. So in 1-point perspective, horizontal lines are always horizontal, vertical lines are always vertical, orthogonals are always orthogonals. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and grab your vanishing point and make sure it's in the center of the page. Okay. And then go ahead and lock it into place. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to explore basic shapes. So let's start off in the bottom right down here somewhere with, make sure your magnet's on. A horizontal line. Now we start kind of easy. So then do a vertical line, and then connect it. In the app, just go ahead and hit the little lock. Once you've done this, which is of course just a rectangle, just change your colors a little bit. Pick something analogous, so something close to it on the color wheel. And then from each corner, you're going to do an orthogonal back to the vanishing point. Okay. So then next will be the other side of the box. So pick another color that's kind of close to it, analogous color, and do vertical line, horizontal line, horizontal line, vertical line. And when we zoom in, little iPad. We can see that what's important is that the lines intersect the orthogonals. Here, 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 and here. Okay. If when you do that, your lines are not intersecting your orthogonals, then you're off somewhere. Watch out for starting to get your different lines all mixed up. That happens a lot. Okay. And that's why I always suggest that you change colors so that you can keep track of things. My poor little iPad. Okay. So what happens here, right? Like what is happening is that when we look at this front plane here, it is largest because it's closest to us. We know that it's always going to be a 1-point perspective because the plane is facing us. In a 2-point perspective, I have a corner. And here I don't. Here I have a plane. So it's close to us, so that means it's the largest. It's flat. Okay. And it's blocking everything else if we make it opaque. However, if it's clear and we see through, we can see the back plane, right, and the front plane. And they have to be related to one another in an evenly distributed, diminishing perspective. Okay. Turn off that layer, make a new layer, turn off the grid. Let's take it back to middle school. I'm going to pick my rectangle tool. Rectangle. And pick another rectangle. Rectangle. And then connect them. Who did this in middle school? It's 1-point perspective. Okay, classic middle school. Who did this? Yeah, a little thing on the top. How is that still living? Like, what does it even mean? It's just like, I can check this out. I can make this thing look like it's in front of this thing. And that is why drawing is fun, okay? When we do this, we are basically like interpreting perspective. We are, basically taking this really complicated theory, way of seeing, and saying, actually, if I just do this and this, it works. And it does. What this is what we call intuitive perspective. Okay, so intuitive perspective, you can think about like one of my favorite periods of history in terms of painting, Pompeian painting. So in the Pompeian painting, it's in your website I made for you. They kind of knew how things work. They were like, okay, if I kind of stand here and I kind of look at this, I can kind of see that part and this part goes here, and it kind of works. What they didn't have was like this like rigidity of Renaissance linear perspective. Now, one of the reasons why I talk about perspective as being somewhat theoretical is that like buildings are made by humans. So the theory works always on paper. And it helps us to interpret space in real life. But like, if you're in the C building at Bellevue College, and I put you in the middle of the hallway, a a lot of components in the hallway don't match up because they were made by humans. And not only were they made by humans, but they were made by humans like 50 years ago. So ceiling panels are dropping. One wall's a little larger than another. Someone left a chair in the middle of the hallway. And so, like, the thing about linear perspective that you have to remember is that you're basically taking, like, a principle and forcing it onto reality. And so sometimes it doesn't work. And it frustrates students because they go out to do everything and they do everything the way they should and it all functions, you know, on paper well, and then they start to actually measure visually and suddenly like what's supposed to be a straight edge is no longer a straight edge. So this space that we're creating, this is a hyper restricted space. But when you get out into the real world, cantilevered balconies that were built 50 years ago are starting to sag. You know, the road that was made to be straight is curved a little bit. And so that's the difference between reality and like the restriction of the principle. So let's turn that back on. Okay, and let's do another one. So let's use this tool to, oh, you can't because it turns off the thing. Okay, you can't use that tool to your advantage. Let's just go ahead and up here, let's make another box, another square. I don't mind how big it is. And then let's connect it back there. Let's make this one opaque. Now, if we make this box a square, because perspective tells us how space is receding, if the box is a square and this side here is receding, that tells us that that side should be longer or shorter than the front. Which one? Yes, again. So if this here, if that face is part of a square, say, and each side of the square should be this is in reality the same height and width. Since this edge here is receding back in space, is it going to be longer or shorter than this one, this face here? Take a stab at it. You've already got is 50% chance you're right, 50% chance you're wrong.
Shorter?
Yes, absolutely. Why?
Because of the way it's positioned. The other one was shorter, whether the one on the side, which you can't see, is going to be longer because of how it's positioned on the screen.
Oh, I understand. Close, okay. Sorry, I think I misunderstood. So think about it this way. This side here, this idea of this width, I think you're saying the same thing as me, but let's just check. To make this side over here have the same dimensions as this, so to make this here have the same dimensions as this actually has to be shorter than this, because this one here is going back in space. Were we saying the same thing?
Yeah.
Okay. If this side was longer, then we would end up with something that looked like this, perhaps. But instead, because it's shortest, it's going to be more like this, with this being smaller than this. So you have to remember that as things go back in space, they get smaller and they get shorter. Okay, and those things happen because this is diminishing. Diminishing, sorry, terrible spelling, terrible speller. So then we have this now, and so then we would just draw our horizontal line this way. Okay, and then theoretically, these are now close to being the same width to one another, even though this is visually shorter than that. Thanks, Mabel. Isabel, did you get it working? Good. Okay. So let's talk about like the ways in which we can analyze forms. So let's just go ahead and let's use this tool, pick a rectangle and just put it anywhere you want on the page. Okay. Then you can turn on your 1-point perspective. My suggestion is to change color. And go ahead and make sure your magnet's on and do your orthogonals. If you've ever had to learn perspective with a ruler and a pencil, this is so much easier. Okay. Now, go ahead and divide the space. Give yourself a length here. I don't mind how long it is. Oops. Usually if you end up with like little holes like this, it just means that you did something wrong over there. Okay. Now, make a new layer, change colors. And we're going to find the center of the front square. What's the easiest way to do that? Also, something I like to do when I do this is I like to click on these layers and decrease the opacity so they're easy to see through. How do I find the center of the front square? What's the easiest way to do it? Now you notice that your ruler on Sketchbook doesn't have numbers, so you can't measure.
Can you draw an X on the square and then make a center point from there?
Just like here?
No, as in like a line going from one corner to the other.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Yay! You can take over. I'll go home. Wait, I am home. teaching at home. So I'm going to use this guide, this little thing here. I'm going to make sure I have that one. And then you have to, if you have the app, you have to use 2 fingers. Spin it. And just draw your line. I think in the desktop version, you just have a straight line tool that lets you draw a straight line, which is nice. So anytime you're trying to find the center of something, you can go corner to corner. So like, I'm a dreadful carpenter, but I do know that if I cut a piece of wood and I want to make sure it's square, I can measure corner to corner, and as long as the measurements are the same, then I know that this thing is square. Now, I always then tell students that our goal when we find the center of something, so go ahead and find the horizontal center and the vertical. I call it the Union Jack. So we end up with something like that. So let's go back to the first layer. Okay. And then let's go in here and let's erase all of this. We've not dealt with the back yet, so we can leave that for now. And you can go back to your pen. Turn your perspective back on. And then draw this all the way back through here. And then we're going to put a new orthogonal here. So back there, then we can go ahead and go back to this layer, which is the one with the segmentation on it. And instead of using the grid, the guide, we can just use the straight line tool, which if you click on the square and circle is the first option. So you just go corner to corner, horizontal, vertical, horizontal. And then we can see back there that, oops, make sure you turn off your straight line tool. If we erase this, there, here, that we can then remove that same section back there. Okay.
Is there a trick to getting the eraser to work?
Make sure you're on the layer that's unlocked and visible. Make sure that it's not, if it gets too tiny, especially if you're really zoomed out, you won't see it.
Okay, the button I can just not click on. Nothing happens.
Oh, interesting.
I
And
double
what
checked
about the other option?
What other option is that?
Are you on the desktop?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, try this. Is your perspective grid turned on?
Yeah.
Turn it off.
Yeah, I've tried it both ways.
Weird.
Oh, there it is. Oh, now it's working. Thank you.
Was it the perspective grid?
I don't know what it was because I didn't do anything different. So
Because we just paid attention to it and it was
yeah,
like, it's me time, it's me.
I'm just gonna roll with it.
Okay. So now we have this like kind of complicated form, right? And what we want to do is when we do something like this, we need to like figure out like, okay, are we actually going to see any of that stuff in the back? And so like make a new layer and then change your color. I'm just going to go to black so it's visible. Okay. And then you can just now use that straight line tool and go through. So we'd see this line. We're going to see this edge. We would see this. We would see this. We're going to see this. We're going to see that. We're going to see this. And we're going to see that. And then we're definitely going to see this. And this. And this. Aha. We're going to see this. We're not going to see any of the stuff on the back. Cool. So what's, you know, the question always, I think, with perspective is like, when you build something, sometimes you end up building something and it's quite complicated and then you just never see it. But it's important to remember that the L shape in the front is still in the back. It's just hidden. Okay. Questions? It's really hard for me because like, I know that your screen is where your camera is, and some of you are just like intently looking like so intently at the screen, and I'm like, do they need help? My dance teacher calls it math face. I always have math face on, like.
I'm following your concepts. I'm just struggling to keep up with using the app because it's not working the way it should. So that's why I'm staring hard.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's not perfect. You know, one of the reasons that I like this, and actually I do this now in the classroom too, I don't use rulers and stuff, is that like a lot of people aren't given the opportunity to learn to use rulers in like grade school. And of course you should be, but it's just not something that's part of the curriculum many times now. And perhaps in the future it won't be necessary. Like I wonder, some of you are probably in interior design. I don't know who's in interior design, maybe one or two of you, a couple of you. You know, you have programs now where you don't even need to draw stairs. You just like click stairs and it like drops stairs in. You know? Things like my friends, a lot of my friends who didn't do well academically in like middle school and high school, they got to take classes like drafting because they got to take vocational classes at the high school. And when I taught at that same high school, a lot of those classes were gone. It's quite a shame. Okay. Ready to try something else? Okay. We're going to stick with 1 point perspective. Now, again, I change like I make so many layers. I always tell everybody they're free. Don't worry about it. Okay. Supposed to draw the L shape or just a square and rectangle. Yeah, I wanted to go through the process of drawing the actual L shape with you. We're going to do another one that's similar. So let's go ahead and turn the 1-point perspective guide on. All right. And I'm going to make a new layer. I can turn my L off. But I'm going to pick like a kind of a bright color so that I can build lots of layers. So I'm just going to make over here, like I'm going to make, oh, wrong thing. I'm just going to make a nice tall rectangle here. And then I'm going to turn my perspective grid back on. And then the next thing is the orthogonals. I'm going to connect my orthogonals. Like that. Now I'm just going to make a line back here. I don't know, I want this to be kind of long. So then I'm just going to draw over to the left orthogonal. And then straight down. Go ahead and decrease the opacity of that. Make a new layer. Go to your square and circle tool, pick the line tool, change the color, and then go corner to corner here, corner to corner here. And then back here, you can go corner to corner, corner to corner. Now, technically speaking, I should now be able to draw a horizontal line right here between the two. Like so. So now what's cool is basically like the sky's the limit. We could come through and I could do something like this. And we could make like, you know, like little steps in here. Something like that. We're not going to, we're not there yet. But we could, the sky's the limit. Okay. So then we're just gonna use that straight line tool again, and we're gonna do a horizontal line, sorry, vertical line, I keep doing that. Here, and a vertical line here. So now we found the horizontal width, center, and the height, center. So now if I put my stylus right on the vanishing point and I draw a line straight through, it should go right through that center like that. So this is where it gets fun because you start to build up all this pedimento. And we can even use that line now to find the horizontal center here. Let's make a new layer. And y'all, if we go too fast, it's okay. We're just, all I'm doing is playing. And we're just exploring. I just think that's fun. So now we're gonna take another color, something darker. Okay. And so then I'm just gonna keep the perspective grid off for now. And I'm gonna make a shape. Let's start with this line here and this line here. Go over horizontal, go over horizontal. Let's go all the way back to here and go up there. I'm going to copy this line here, copy this line here, copy that line there. Make sure they match up. Okay. I'm going to take this all the way up here. You should be able to draw a horizontal line right here, and bam, and down. I'm going to follow this line here, follow this line here, follow this line there. So where we got some funkiness there is my fault. What just happened? Ah, I always forget to turn the line off. That should be horizontal. Yeah. Should be a bit more vertical. There we go. That's better. So if we make a new layer, we can just change colors. And we can use this to find center to center. Horizontal, sorry, vertical. I keep doing that. And then we could then divide this further. What if instead we made a doorway there by finding this corner to corner and this corner to corner and this vertical and that vertical and that horizontal. So what, how do you get better at this? Like, how do you learn? How does this all start to make sense? Honestly, you play. It's like when you're a kid, as educators, we talk about how playing is one of the best ways to learn. And I know I'm going a bit fast right now, but I also am just sort of showing you, like, how do you play? Like, it's okay to play. It's okay. Think about it this way. This is all digital right now, and all you're doing is playing. And guess what? If you make mistakes, it doesn't matter. You just hit undo. This just needs a horizontal line. Now we got like a little horse. Questions? Okay. So something else that's really important to kind of think about is like when we turn this tool back on, the planes, like this plane, like we can see these planes here. We can see this plane here. Why can we see those planes? What is their relationship to our eye level that lets us see those planes? Where is our eye level?
They're under the vanishing point.
Okay, they're under the vanishing point, but more importantly, they're under the
Horizon.
perfect. Okay, so because they're under the horizon line, and if you remember, the horizon line is our eye level, we see the top planes here because they're below the eye level. So everyone take a second, and without any guidance from me, draw me, don't go circular, like don't do a cylinder. Let's keep it rectilinear and square. Draw me some shapes above the horizon line. We're gonna do 10 minutes worth. 10 minutes of square and rectangle-like shapes above the horizon line, as complex or as simple as you want them to be. So what we're trying to do is think about how does the relationship of a form to us in terms of our standing point and our horizon line affect which parts of the form we can see. So we built this shape on the right, on the left. Now, most of the shape is all going to be on the left now because the vanishing point's on the right. So then I'm going to go to my straight line tool, and I'm going to draw corner to corner, corner to corner. And then I'm going to give a vertical line there. So that's actually the center of the space. So even though the front section on the left looks gigantic to the section on the right, that's like half and half. So if I took that back corner and I pulled it in space, let's do this. Let's do this so you can see. No, that's not the one I want. It's so much easier in Photoshop. But if I took that and I kind of started to move it up and then move it out and then push this back, there we go. That's what I kind of wanted. Then I can start to force it to be a flat shape. Not very successfully right now, but that's, I can do that. And what we would end up with in the end would just be, something like this. But because it's in perspective, it's going to actually shift and diminish, and that front section is going to be really big and the back section is going to be really small. So then to find the center of that back section, we're actually going to divide that again. And now we can really see quite a large diminishment in size. Okay, so now we've got two sections that we're primarily going to look at, this section and this section. So we just found the center of the back section. So let's find the center of the front section. Not doing a very good job. Okay. Now we have two halves, and they're both that we've cut both halves in half. So then what we could do is we've got all kinds of choices that we can do. But what I'd like to do is I want to come and find the way in which I can create equal divisions of space also in the top. So if I draw a horizontal line through there, it should intersect all of the diagonal sectional lines. Okay. And then to find the center of each top square or rectangle, I'm going to go corner to corner up here. And so it intersects in this place. So now I can turn my perspective grid on again and draw that down and up. And if I do the same thing on the bottom here, I'm going to get a similar result. Now what's cool there, right, is that like once we saw that it was going to intersect where the red lines met that blue line here, where this met that, once we saw it here, we knew that would be the same case down there. And once we found those 2 points, if we just drew our orthogonals, then automatically we've got those sections divided the same way. Okay. So let's go ahead and take a new layer. And we're just going to make some really simple letters. Okay, I'm going to use the perspective grid. I'm going to turn that on. And we're not going to we're going to look at this height here. And we're going to say that height is going to be equal to the thickness of the letter all throughout. Okay. So we're going to basically, there's a certain way to do this, we're not going to do it. We're going to basically just sort of playfully create this letter. We're going to think about this height here, and we're going to give ourselves what we think of as an equal distance here to this height here. And then just draw a straight line up. And then draw this line in, draw that line in, draw that line in, draw that line in, draw that line in, this line, that line, that line, that line, and now I have that. And I can kind of go in here, and I don't need this. That was a mistake. I can get rid of that. Get rid of this. Get rid of this. C. Now what we want to do to find the back was, this is one of the techniques. There's lots of techniques. I'm going to go back and change my color. I'm going to draw a horizontal line over here. Whoops, I should have my grid on. Horizontal line here. And where it intersects here, there, I'm just going to draw a straight line up like that. Now here I need a horizontal line. And here I need a horizontal line. And here I need my orthogonal. And here I need my orthogonal. So if I go to this layer here, pick up the color I was using, and draw over that, perhaps not very well. Now, what's important to remember, y'all, is that even though we can't see that back C, that it still exists. If I drew it in, you get something like this. To move my tablet a little bit. So it looks something like that back there. Because this C here is running parallel with this C here, and they're running together through space. Okay, but because a lot of that is blocked, we don't need to see it yet. We don't need to draw it. Okay. Let's do another letter together. Now we're going to go here to here. Okay. Turn my perspective grid on. I'm going to do a vertical line here. And then we're going to use this space here. We're going to do horizontal over, draw straight up, horizontal over. Because we're not going to have anything between the letters. And so that means that just like here where we see this plane, we now see this plane. Okay. Now we've kind of got an indication here and here of height. We could follow that line there. So let's follow that line there to make our life easy, just because we're learning. Okay. So that's going to be, we're going to keep that height here and here. But we also need to figure out a third one because we're going to do an E. So we're going to draw this line here. And let's go ahead and draw this line here. We're going to do this one. Here. And here. And here. We're going to think about this height here between those two orthogonals, this one and this one. I'm going to help that to make our line here. Now for this last part, because the horizon line is going right through the middle of our letters, then that means that when we do this, we can draw equal sides on the top and bottom. Use this intersection here. What happened? Why did it go white? Oh, I changed the color somehow? Too many crickets. Here and here and here. Now when we zoom in, we can see that we've already kind of set up the width back here with these blue lines. So we can already know that that line there is the back edge of the letter. So we just draw a horizontal line there, orthogonal there. Okay. Now up here we see less. We have this and we have this. Now this, we don't see any of the bottom or any of the top because it's right to the center of the horizon line. So if we go back to our layer with the C and pick up the color, so it's similar, and draw over our E, just going to put this layer on top of the other layer. And I just draw in the parts I need. I should now have an E in perspective. And I could just clean it up. No. There we go. So this is kind of what we're going to be working on. And it's going to get kind of like more and more complicated, I'm afraid. And so like what you really need to do is make sure that like, you know, you're getting the help that you need by asking questions and reaching out to me if you need additional help. Because if I lose you now, as we go forward and get into more and more complicated things, it'll be harder for you to catch up. Okay. So what kind of questions are there?
Is there any kind of snap to function in the sketchbook app? Like snap to line?
Other than the perspective guide?
Yeah.
Not really. Not that I know of.
Okay.
Like in Photoshop, you mean? Yeah, no. Fortunately, no. But then again, I might just not know it. My preference is, you know, I like Procreate a lot, but for the perspective stuff, Sketchbook beats Procreate, but for a lot of other things, Procreate beats Sketchbook. Okay. That was a great question. Other questions?
Are you gonna post this recording?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, totally. This is definitely like one of the hardest things that we do. And yeah, I tend to always post these now, which is interesting because it's something that I would never have thought about doing when I was like on campus. And now I'm like, hey, I should do this even when we go back to campus. Other questions? Okay. Go ahead and just reload to the same place that we did earlier. Okay. Then for your homework, you have your reading with your two artists per chapter, so 4 artists total. And then your website, and then start to dig into your perspective, okay?